Hello, Culture Matters podcast. I'm so excited to introduce you to our guest. But before I do that, here is a quote I picked just for this episode. Danger alone acquaints us with our own resources, our virtues, our armor and weapons, our spirit, and forces us to be strong. Friedrich Nietzsche. My good friend, our family to the Culture Matters podcast, the one, the only, Eddy Perez is back for another episode of the Culture Matters podcast. Founder of EPM, leader, friend, mentor, steward of the American gift. Thank you for coming back to the Culture Matters podcast. I got a lot of questions.
My pleasure.
My pleasure. I love it. You know, today, what makes someone that is responsible for the American gift, that would be home ownership.
Mm-hmm.
There are people that are looking to create their lives in the context of home ownership today. So what makes someone that makes that happen in the capacity of loan origination, the brokering of that gift? What makes that person successful to be able to do that job today?
A lot has evolved. So today, the real key is, do you know how to foster? First of all, do you know how to create, foster, and maintain relationships? That's number one in three categories. Number two, are you willing to understand that regardless of what you do and how well you do it, you are going to lose opportunities? That's possibly the hardest part. And then number three, you, to be able to deliver this, have to understand how to make somebody a homeowner. So you have to understand guidelines and how to structure loans. Those are my thoughts on the three things that are the most crucial to making somebody an incredible loan originator today.
So let's start with number one, right? Create relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Under pressure. I'm uncertain of my next couple moves.
Sure.
I'm coming to you on bent knee, emotional, but open. I'm ready to do the work.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you steer me? Creating relationships.
I mean, the first thing is you have to create your own brand of that part. So the advantage today that used to not exist is social media. So I would tell you that you got to start being an educator out there and building your brand. Because just to call real estate agents and try to get their business, I mean, that's what everybody attempts to do. And that isn't necessarily effective. However, I do believe that's part of your craft, that you have to do that part of it. But you'd have to build your brand by A, first of all, doing the work and going out social media. B, going to networking events, getting involved locally. There's so many different ways to get involved and to serve. And then third, having the courage to do it, because there's going to be a lot of rejection, especially at first, while you build up your business of getting people to deliver. Because you have to understand, for them to believe in you, you have to take action, deliver for them first, consistently. And that just does not happen if you don't brand yourself and put yourself out there.
I think it was like years ago now, it comes to mind, that I saw you on LinkedIn doing push-ups.
That was 4 years ago. It wasn't that long ago.
Feels like an eternity.
Well, that was before COVID. So yeah, you can maybe multiply that by 2.
what what was going through your mind at the time when you were putting yourself out there in that way? There's plenty of reasons. I'm sure you could have said to yourself, I have more to lose here than to gain putting myself on social media, or I have this to do, I have that to do, this responsibility. What was going through your mind, and why were you
You know,
doing it?
I don't really think you have a lot to lose on social media if you're authentic and if you're intentional about it. So I'm not sure that I'm one that believes that. Why was I doing that? I had just found out how much, you speak about loan originations. What I love about this industry and what we do in particular outside of it is what we do for even the veteran. Um, Not that it's not important to help all Americans, because it is. However, that's kind of one of those that you get a double whammy. You help a veteran that served our country, that allows us to keep our property rights, that allow us to have this American gift. And on top of that, you're getting them a loan. So it's one of those, it's like habit stacking. You get to, that's like, that counts as two almost. And that's when I just found out that veterans on average were dying by suicide every day, 22. So a friend of mine
Well,
who was a real estate broker and a veteran told me all about it. And to be honest with you, it turned out to be extremely fun, and it went viral because I don't know. I don't know why, because it had just been like, it had been quite a while, 6, 7 years from the ice bucket challenge. I decided just to call it the 22 and 22 challenge. And I started at the end of it tagging 3 people. And, I got to give my buddy Kevin Perenio credit. I tagged him first with 2 others. And then the antes just raised. It went from me doing push ups to he did it with 4 others.
wow.
He had been on an executive retreat. He did it on a boat. Then he hit 3 other people, who then hit 3 other people, who then three. I mean, it got insane. And then, like anything in a good competitive nature, the good thing about competition, because to me, competition shouldn't even really be called competition. Should probably be called your colleagues. And yes, you may have to outdo your colleagues. However, um, then in a fun way, everybody started taking it up like notches and notches and notches. And it just got to be really, really fun. I wound up getting other people involved. There was one time that we did it. This is a funny part of that story. Is one of them we had to do 3 takes because the first one they didn't hit the record button. The second one, she somehow put it in slow mo, and then
That's
the
funny.
third one we did it. So yeah, we wound up doing 66 push-ups that day. Um, Luckily, I'm fortunate enough that I can do them, and so did some of the crew. Some of the crew was a little suffering though. They were in the back going, "Oh my god, we got to do this again!" And it was a hot, sunny day in the summer because it also started coincidentally. I said, "Oh, we're on the 22nd floor on August 22nd." I said, "Oh yeah, 22 and 22 challenge," and like anything, that's how it goes. So I would tell you,
Amazing.
I'm not. I just think that social, if you're done authentically, can be such a powerful. I want to use the word weapon because it sounds like it's going to do something of some sort of destruction. I would say just it's such a powerful medium if you do it properly.
Fostering relationships. That was right. The next piece of your master class,
Mhm.
and I'm thinking that uh, this tagging, is that part of that spirit?
What?
Well, you were tagging people to be a part of the challenge, and then like
Yeah.
my follow up question to that is,
Tag your it. Yes, tag
how
your
do you
it. The
foster?
American. Yeah. How do you foster good relationships? Like anything, the best way to build trust is to deliver action. You got to do. So you have to do for the other person what's in their best interest, not yours, for their sake. Um, so that's you have to really, and that's you can even say that's part of the maintain. I would say that the next part of maintain, you got to go the extra mile. But yes, you can't build trust and lasting belief without action. You have to do. And it can't just be like, hey, where's my next loan? We'll just use that as an example for a real estate agent. What are you doing to help them grow their business too? If you're doing great branding on social, why don't you start teaching classes on social as a perfect example? Because most people, that is such at an infancy stage. Like, yes, there is a gazillion amount of content out there. So I'm not going to sit here and say there's not, but it's still at its infancy stage of really morphing itself. You have kind of the people who started it, the pioneers, and you have some people that are up and coming, and then pretty much everybody's in this smaller bucket of I do it here and there.
What about maintenance? How do we, how, what are some things that we could do to undermine our relationships? Because I'm thinking, right, the inverse of maintaining would be losing.
Do not engage them, to not stay in contact with them, to not every once in a while. It doesn't have to be. And look, I get it. The brain psychologically, the ego for survival is thinking, how do I get the next loan? What do I do to make sure to get the next loan? Is the example here. You would be shocked if you just call somebody that you work with, you do business with, that, hey, how are you? What's going on with you? Um, you can't make it all just about business, because business is just is one facet medium of life. There's that thing called life that is the medium of all, and then there's brackets. And the day and age, and Steve Jobs changed it with the iPhone. Business, personal, and once again, how to maintain relationships. As crazy as it sounds, even though I'm a fan of video calls and a fan of the phone call, texting people here and there, seeing just how they are, even sharing a funny meme or something that, or their sports team wins, something that about them comes up, their kid's birthday, just a genuine sign of respect, a nice help, because that's really what you're doing, which respect is the ultimate form of love. Just that display of affection, we'll call it, will maintain relationships. If not, what I would say, by doing that, you keep them ignited. I mean, it's pretty much like the stove and the fire is burning instead of turning it on and off. And I get it. People have their own lives. They have things that come up. Oh my God, this is hard. I deal with so many people. You just got to get organized. That's where a CRM is very powerful. That's where when people's birthdays are. You can program, when, and I mean, you can go program it as soon as you find out when their kids' birthdays are. Even in your phone, you could program it, and it reminds you in your calendar every morning, first thing. Like, there is plenty of ways to set yourself up for success. You just have to put in the work and put in the early labor, and then it'll pay dividends.
I view you as someone that's really mastered this. Do you consider yourself master at this piece
And
of it?
what the follow up, you could say, the relationship building piece.
Yeah, long time. And then, yeah.
Yeah, I
When,
mean,
yeah. How'd you learn it?
Man, how long have I done this? I'm trying to think. I mean, I'd probably say early in my life. I'd say probably first through baseball. Organization was very important. That camaraderie was very important. I'd then say definitely in the fraternity in college, because that's also when I went to college in the mid to late 90s. It was all when the internet was being born and growing. There were so many ways to stay organized electronically. So yeah, I'd say it's probably been a journey more. I'd say probably a little over 30-year journey that's evolved. Is it at where it is today? No, because like anything, momentum, it's like a little snowball.
Hmm.
Starts at the top, evolves into an avalanche.
The second piece that you said earlier was, are you willing to do everything that you do? Wait, I wrote this down because this is good stuff. Are you willing to do what you do and how you do it, but still lose?
Yeah, that's a tough one for people. From an originator standpoint, and to my brethren, I love you out there. For those that are my brethren, I'm not trying to insult you when I say this. Too many of them get caught up on the loans that they don't close versus the loans that they do close. And they get caught up with, well, it has to be because of my interest rates and somebody's stealing from me and this person's doing this. So there's some victimhood that shows up there. No, what you don't understand about the consumer is somebody didn't go with you because of a better deal every time. And actually, to be candid with you, I used to go back and call the people I lost deals to. Usually it was nothing to do with my interest rate. It had to maybe do with, oh, this person got me an eighth lower, but they gave me the option of paying higher in fees, and I'd rather do that. So shame on me for not being more, putting a couple more options out there, or more importantly, letting them know that the consumer, you consumer, really do structure how this works, because it's a give and take, it's a seesaw, you know. And look, I get it. Every consumer out there in the history of the world will tell you they want the absolute best price, the absolute best service, and the absolute lowest fees. So I already know that part. The irony is that's just not how it works.
Mm.
So it's part of like a seesaw almost, and you have to
Mm.
explain it to customers. And customers sometimes will go with somebody else, and they may not give you the full truth of why. They just, it's a very emotional thing to refinance or buy a home. Therefore, people want to stay private about that to a degree. And they just may not tell you, and they may go dark, and it may have more than likely nothing to do with price, which is what originators obsess over. They can't even, it's the craziest thing I've ever seen on how much they obsess over it. Like, I'm losing it because of this. This person's doing this to me. And I'm tired of, using these clients because now they're out of the market. It's like, guys, it's just not that way. And I mean, you got to look at it like baseball. I mean, I get it. You want every deal. Who doesn't? It's not reality. It's not even close to reality. And you got to have realism in your life. You have to have a certain understanding of realism. You'll lose loans and you just move on to the next one. And I know they're like, oh, it's tough in this market right now. Yeah, it is. However, if you had built the relationships for so many years, yeah, you may not be doing as well as you were doing before, but you're doing probably better than most.
Mm.
And you are going to lose some deals. People will, you don't know who you catch them on a certain day. Somebody caught them a certain day. Somebody may have bonded with them better. That does happen. Look inward and say, hey, did I really get to understand this person's needs?
You think there's a call to calm in a sense? Because I'm thinking that it must be stressful to be the person purchasing their home.
There's a lot of stress when you're buying a home. That
I'm
just,
thinking like if the loan officer, they can either be adding to that or lowering it. I'm curious what your thoughts are on that.
it's a good point. Yes, I would say that no shockingly, whoever puts them at ease the best will probably win way more deals. Whoever knows how to talk to them and explain everything with simplicity, because, there's a reason why, you know, it's always one of these fun banters. Yeah, I'm an iPhone user, iPhone versus Android user, and Android users try to say that the iPhone, you know, It's the easiest thing in the world to use. That's why a 1-year-old kid can use it. And I don't like its functionality. It's just it was built too basic. Duh. Steve Jobs built it basic on purpose. Like hearing that a 1-year-old could use it, as we've seen happen, is not what he wasn't trying to accomplish. So simplicity does make things effective more than likely, instead of having to learn some deep, algorithm of quantum physics. This is getting alone. There's a great line in Bull Durham movie, yeah, late 80s, where the coach is upset they're not playing well. And he goes in there and he throws some bats to scare them, and he brings them up and he does kind of explain it. He tells them how they lollygag on the field, they lollygag at the play. He goes, baseball is very simple. He's like, catch the ball, hit the ball, throw the ball.
Wow.
I would say for those that could do that in mortgages, they'll do very well. It is most of life, seriously, is actually extremely simple if you let it. If you let it, that's the key. That's the key.
How to make someone a homeowner, like the structuring, the education underneath the
Sure.
relationship. What do you mean by that? And how can people level up? And
Um, I think loan originators, as boring as they are to read and study, should really, really study the guidelines of all the loan programs. And I get that they're boring. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that reading the FHA manual, VA manual, USDA manual, Fannie and Freddie manual, even non-QM manuals. I am not going to sit here and tell you that there are not better things that you can think about doing. However, it goes back to doing the work. Because what I can tell you is this: if you do the work and you do it very well and you stay sharp on it, once you've lifted that weight and you maintain it, you will keep having the ability to lift that weight instead of having to constantly be going back and checking and looking unprofessional if you don't know your guidelines. You got to know them. It's crucial, especially in this market where the leading buyer is the first time home buyer. Some of them don't have as much established credit, or they haven't ever had this finances to this level. This is a big purchase. You want to make sure you're not letting them put themselves, even if they qualify on paper, in a situation that if one of them loses a job or one little thing goes sideways, that they don't have an empty house with no furniture in it because they can't afford to get furniture. So you got to really make sure that you're not putting people in positions. And this is where you may lose things that I go back to go back to number two. You may have to tell people no, they shouldn't do this. And look, they may go somewhere down the street and do it. But that doesn't mean that you have to compromise putting them in a position. And look, I understand. Well, your job's not to defend them and pay Big Brother. I didn't say play Big Brother, but if you know, because you should be a financial expert at that point to really understand financing and understanding people's full financial picture. If they have a kid on the way, you already know, and they have a smaller car and they're now at kid 2 or 3, you know that the SUV is coming, and that's an added expense. So you have to ask all these questions up front, because sometimes it's better to get less, to really leave themselves a cushion, because you don't want them to then burden you. Because if you truly believe in your heart of hearts as an originator that if you don't do that, they could go somewhere else. They could. That's where you lose things. But more importantly, if you think when they're under stress later that they're not going to naturally lean back and start to maybe blame you deep down, which I'm not going to sit here and say it's your fault. People have to take self responsibility, but them and their friends forget about ever getting those referrals.
Mm.
And you'd be shocked when you turn down people, or even when you're completely candid. Like I had people that would come to me, even friends recently, and I don't originate anymore, and I haven't originated in probably 10, 12 years myself. However, some friends of mine would come to me and I'd be like, look, and it may be some clients that have done better for themselves. I'm like, hey, do you have a wealth management account? And they'd be like, yeah. Yeah, you probably need to get a loan there. Why are you turning me down? Trust me, call them. You'll thank me later. And I did that early in my career. I was very candid with some higher worth individuals on their accessibility and what they do. And then they have family and friends too. So then they would refer me their friends. You'd be shocked when you turn somebody down how many other referrals you get. You would be surprised at that. But yeah, you got to learn how to structure a loan. And that's part of it too. Understanding the landscape is part of the structuring that I mean, because I would have to understand. And it was because I'd previously lost loans that way to wealth management that that's a better play for these individuals and they should look at it.
In closing, if you were to encompass these three pillars in a sense, or the theme of what someone working in the trenches providing the American gift today can take away from this conversation, how would you try to encapsulate these three pillars? Right, the creating, the fostering, the maintaining, and the how would I articulate number two? Like be willing to lose in a sense, and then you said structuring. So what's the takeaway? How do we
You're not going to get a hit at every at bat is probably the best way to put this echoing. You're gonna have some strikeouts. How could I articulate it? Oh wow, one arching over theme you're asking for.
Yeah.
Man, that's a good one. Let me think for a second. I'll say this. I'd say more of a philosophy, not really a theme. You have to enjoy. Okay, no, I could say it's a theme because this is the underlining part of all three. You have to enjoy the engagement with others. You have to be willing to be vulnerable with the engagement of others to encompass all of them, because you have to be vulnerable. You may lose them. You have to engage because knowing that extra question and information allows you to structure a loan better. And it allows you to fact find, to build relationship and foster it and grow it in a long period of time. So that's what I say. You have to be willing to engage for their sake, or skin in their game, not just thinking skin in your game. That's what I would say philosophically in an overarching theme of being a great originator. And you can take being a great originator in all facets of your life and use the same approach, from your kids to your relationships to other business ventures, and people in other industries that listen can follow that same structure, because it's still at the end about the human experience. That's always the most important part, and to understand the human condition that allows you to follow the human experience.